Alrighty, welcome back to the Frat House and 5 minutes at the Frat House with Frat House Mike and Sidekick. And we've got a packed show for you this evening on what is our last show of our first year. Yep, that's right, at 52 straight
The season
weeks.
finale.
The season
What's
finale.
going to be the cliffhanger?
Oh my goodness. Now, you might recall that, I guess it was about 3 weeks ago, we were scheduled to sit down with Philadelphia Eagles head coach, our own Andy Reid. And unfortunately, we had to postpone that. So the other day, Sidekick, I had a chance to actually catch up and a couple of minutes chatting with our own Andy Reid, and we want to bring that clip to you right now. Alrighty, thanks for joining us here. This is a tremendous thrill for all of us here at the Frat House. We are just outside of the NovaCare Center, and we have got with us, as promised, we've got the head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, Andy Reid. And we really appreciate having you here, Coach Reid.
Well, thanks for having me, Mike.
We were going to have you on, I guess, about 3 weeks ago, and then that was during the situation, unfortunately, with the passing of your son. And from all of us here at the Frat House, we want to just pass along our condolences on that one.
Thank you, Mike.
Sad situation. But while we've got you, we do have a couple of questions. We've got a season that's pending. It's coming up in what? We're talking, I guess, about 10 days or so. And you've got yourself a little bit, I don't want to say a quarterback controversy, but a little bit of a situation with the quarterbacks. I mean, you've got, there's a lot of fan talk right now talking about Nick Foles. And he's got to be honest, he's looked pretty darn good. While, the starter, Mike Vick there, he's taken all of a total number of 12 snaps. That's it, and been out injured twice. So I guess my first question to you, Coach, it's got to be, where's Foles falling in the rotation? I think it's obvious Vick is going to be the starter, but where's Foles falling in the rotation, and where's that leaving Kafka and Edwards?
Well, Mike, we're in a little bit of a pickle. It's I tend to like pickles, but we're in a pickle. We got 4 great quarterbacks, and we got Michael, we got Nick. And then we got Kafka, and then we've got Edwards.
Mm-hmm.
But Foles, I see being the backup right now to Vic, which, given Vic's propensity to get hurt, you could probably assume that means that you'll see Foles starting at some point in this season.
Yeah. So Foles is the number 2 then?
Yes, Foles is the number 2.
And we're going to wait then, I guess, on your decision regarding Mike Kafka and then Trent Edwards.
Yes, I've seen Kafka enough. He's been around enough.
Mm-hmm.
I know what he's got. Thursday night in the game, we're going to have Foles is going to start the first quarter, and we're going to let Edwards play the other 3 quarters and get him some camera time, and we'll evaluate him, and maybe he'll show us something that some potential.
Let's go take a look at things on the opposite side of the ball. There was a lot of post-draft hype about all the defensive players that the Eagles picked up. Yet, I got to be honest with you, Coach, I've not been terribly impressed with the defense yet, particularly from some of the players like Asamoah. And, of course, this is leading the fans back to the whole question about Castillo.
Well, Mike, in the preseason, we're working through the defense. What you've been seeing are a lot of penalties. Penalties because the guys are emotional and want to play and want to prove themselves and make the team, ultimately. I mean, we've got a lot of great guys on defense. Any one of them could be a starter anyplace else in the NFL. So it's highly competitive, and I think that they've just got a little emotion going. I think once we get into the season, you'll see the defense calm down a little bit and, not be committing so many penalties.
Let me ask you now, though, would you say this team is ready for the season opener? I mean, do we have a dream team here this year? Is this a team that's going to get us to the playoffs, that might get us to the Super Bowl?
Well, Mike, I don't want to get into all that. I really don't like the dream team talk and dream seasons and all that stuff. But we're ready for regular season football. The refs might not be, but we are.
Yeah. Now, look, if the Eagles don't get to the Super Bowl, here's the big question. Do you see yourself here with this team next year? I mean, you're showing. We saw a little bit of edginess from you the other night against right in the face there of Colin Jenkins. And some said, well, that shows that the coach that is working for his job.
Well, we were both a little edgy. I was a little edgy. My sugar was down. I'd been a couple meals that we missed prepping for the game, and so I was a little edgy. But I like to see that out of some of the players, especially out of the captains. I want to see some emotion, even if it's it's anger or things like that, because I want to know that they're fired up and they want to play.
All right, Coach, we appreciate you being here. We hope to have you back again, perhaps maybe sometime during the season. Can you do that for us?
Sure can.
All right. Hey, Coach, thank you very much. And so, as you heard there, hopefully we're probably going to be able to get our own Andy Reid back at some point during the regular season.
Yep.
Sometime later this year. All right. But listen, speaking of the season, Sidekick, next week at this time, we're going to be full blown into the NFL season.
Can't wait.
And it was just announced, just yesterday, I believe, that the NFL has said, yes, replacement refs will be officiating in week 1.
Don't pick on the scabs.
Your thoughts on that one?
Big mistake by the NFL. I mean, with regular refs, we sit here every week and we bitch and we complain about blown calls and everything else. And now we got these replacement refs in, and it's
I put up a
horrible.
debacle. I put up a debacle on our Facebook page today that was in last night's New England game, where they could not get a punt return correct. I mean,
Exactly.
it was absolutely ridiculous.
And I don't want to pick on the replacement refs per se, because they're just they're trying to do their job. You know what I mean?
It's just not far.
It's exactly. They needed more time to get used to the game and stuff like that. And I think really the NFL's dropping the ball on this.
Yeah, well, let's hope things go a little better next week in week 1 from what we've seen so far in preseason. Hey, let's go over and take a look at what happened this past week in NASCAR. We had a race down there at that half-mile short track at Bristol Motor Speedway. And as usual, Bristol lived up to its reputation with its typical bump-and-run environment, which saw 13 cautions and numerous wrecks, including one memorable one, which we'll talk about in a moment.
Two memorable ones, actually.
There's one that's probably more memorable than the other, though. At the end of all the fender bender banging, though, that went on, Denny Hamlin won his 3rd race of the season, and pretty much is a lock, I would say, at this point for the chase, after leading 70 of the 500 laps there. Others who came in the top 5. Well, there's Jimmie Johnson again, taking 2nd for his 12th top 5 finish of the season. Jeff Gordon came in 3rd. Brian Vickers came in 4th. Marcus Ambrose came in 5th for the 2nd time in a row, in 2 weeks in a row. Now, there were quite a few spins, as we talked about, off the track, cars into the wall, and vehicles leaving with collision damage, but none was really more dramatic, in my opinion, than the matchup between Sprint Cup defending champion Tony Stewart and Matt Kenseth in lap 332. Now, they were battling for the lead position coming off a restart. And both ended up in the wall as Kenseth tried to take Stewart on the low side. Kenseth ended up driving away from the incident, immediately visiting pit road. Stewart, though, he was definitely heading to the garage. However, in one of the best displays I have seen all year long of NASCAR road rage, Stewart patiently hung out there on pit road and waited for Kenseth to come down the road, where he stood there and just hurled his helmet and made a perfect strike right on the number 17 hood. It was just outstanding. Well, great television, I got to tell you. It was just terrific.
That's what I love about Tony. Tony's one of my favorite drivers, and I love that emotion about him.
Oh, it really was. It really was quite humorous.
And then the Danica one was funny too. So her, sitting there pointing and walking up the track. I mean, there was a lot of good clips from this week's race.
And so, listen, how did the events of last week's race, how does that affect the Sprint Cup leaderboard with just 2 races now remaining before the chase? Well, with the win on Sunday, Greg Biffle, well, he's staying up there, right up there in the top spot with 849 points. Jimmie Johnson has moved up into the number 2 with 838. Dale Jr. stays in 3rd this week with 834. Matt Kenseth drops down to number 4 with 823. And Martin Truex moves into the number 5 spot with 797. And that one I found kind of interesting, Sidekick, because you've got Truex here with no wins and only has 5 top 5s.
Yep.
And yet he's in the 5th spot in the standings. Wild card selections? Where are we standing at this point? Because that's really the big thing.
The first wild card is Casey Kane. He's still in there.
In number 11.
And then, but we've had a change now. Kyle Busch has moved up into that second wild card spot. But it's still, I mean, this is going to go down the wire.
I think so.
You got Jeff Gordon. It's just, I mean, probably within 10 to 15 points of Kyle Busch. You've got Ryan Newman, who's only 3 points behind Jeff Gordon. And then you've got Marcos Ambrose, who's only a few more points below. So it's still wide open for that other spot.
This could go down to the very last week before we know exactly who's going to be number 11 and 12.
And the great thing about the chase now is in 3 weeks, all this doesn't matter anymore.
Right,
Because everything gets readjusted, everybody gets reslotted, and then we start the chase.
So where are we heading this week since we only have 2 weeks left? Well, we're heading down to the 1.5-mile oval at Atlanta Motor Speedway. And that will be aired on ESPN Sunday night at 6:30. Now remember, Sunday night, that's the night before Labor Day, so everybody can check that one out. There's some nighttime racing for us. And it seems to me we've got some strategy changes again this week, Sidekick. And how's that going to affect, how are these strategy changes going to affect the wild card? Some of these guys are going to be fighting for that wild card. That might change the strategy a bit as well. So where you got us going with fantasy?
Well, it's Labor Day weekend. You know what that means? It's the end of summer. Grilling. Sitting back a couple cold ones, a couple shots. And we're going to go down to hot Atlanta Motor Speedway this week for another night race. So for picks this week, there's some usual cast of characters in there. And, I threw one in there to, who's hoping to get a win this week. So Jimmie Johnson, obviously, I mean, the guy's a 3-time winner at Atlanta. Yeah. He's got 11 top 5s. His average finish at Atlanta is a 9.95. So, I mean, come on.
Top 10.
But he's also the most expensive guy on your roster.
Yeah.
So, Matt Kenseth, he's got 1 win, 5 top 5s, 7 top 10s in the last 8 starts. Casey Kane, over the last 6 races, he's the hottest driver on the circuit right now.
In that wildcard chase.
So, yep. So he actually could get out of a wildcard spot and into the top 10.
Right.
Because, Tony dropped all the way back to 10th due to that crash. Greg Biffle. I mean, this guy's been having a great season. Last season we were like, every time we put Biffle on our team, he screw up. This year, this guy's been on a roll.
Yep.
So he's also on there. And then I'm going to throw in cousin Carl Edwards, who's going to go for, he's going for broke now. He's got 2 races. But cookie cutter courses have been good to Carl Edwards. He had an 11 race top 10 streak going into Kentucky where he finished 20th.
Yeah.
So, and he did win on Vegas last year. So I'm throwing him in there. He's gonna go for broke. So if you're, if you want to roll the dice a little bit, and
I don't know, man. I just don't think it's Carl's. I don't think it's Carl's year. That's just my gut feeling. I don't know.
So,
all right, let's go take a look at. Let's go take a look at Major League Baseball. All right. Hey, it doesn't seem that long ago, Sidekick, really, it doesn't, that we were sitting here doing the countdown to baseball. And now we're doing the countdown to the end of the season, which is what, about, I guess, a little bit more than about 4 weeks away. Mm-hmm. Now, for obvious reasons, we haven't talked much about the Philadelphia Phillies this year. So we thought we'd leave our MLB improbables alone this evening. And what we would do is we would have a little bit of Phillies chat with our buddy and our friend and a Phillies expert, Frank Klose, the creator of the website Philadelphia.com, who you and I met with earlier this evening.
Yep.
And so what we want to do for our audience tonight is just, we're going to bring you that tape right now. Okay, folks, listen, we're very pleased to have with us here this evening a Philadelphia Phillies expert, Frank Klose. He's the creator and the owner of Philadelphia.com, which was started back in 2011. And Frank, let me just jump right into it right away. We haven't talked much about the Philadelphia Phillies on this show this season for rather obvious reasons. But it seems to me that in the past couple of weeks, and it's kind of gotten on my nerves a little bit, every time these guys go through 1 or 2 wins in a row, suddenly everybody's got themselves up in an uproar. Oh my gosh, they can get into the playoffs. Oh my gosh, there's a chance they could get there. After losing 2 out of 3 to the Mets, can we finally say this is over?
I believe we can finally say this is over. But I do think it is very encouraging that the fans are having fun. You know, they're going to the games, they're enjoying watching probably the over his head play of Kevin Franson and Eric Kratz. But I think the Phillies fans are really at least enjoying it, and if that helps them enjoy the game, it doesn't bother me so much. But do they have a chance? No. By my calculation, they would have to go 33 and 4 the rest of the way in order to make a playoff spot, and I just don't think that that's very likely at this point.
I frankly had kind of tossed them out the window, I think about 3 weeks ago, to be perfectly honest. The 2 big questions, though, I have taking a look at the season, this season, this year, Cliff Lee. What a disappointment. And then the other's got to be, I mean, and the fans, you know, how fickle we are here, screaming about Charlie Manuel. How much blame gets laid at Cliff Lee? How much blame gets laid at Charlie, and how much gets laid at Cliff?
I don't really think Charlie gets any of the blame as far as Cliff Lee is concerned. I would say in April and May, it was that he didn't have any run support.
Right.
Simply, you know, when you're sending out lineups that involve Hector Luna and Ty Wigginton hitting 4 and 5, you're not going to get much support. And then I think what happened is you got into June. And then perhaps some Cliff Lee's confidence got a little shattered. Then I place a lot of the blame on him from that point, where he gets into the 6th and 7th innings and he can't hold a lead.
Yeah. And
that's pretty much his fault. I mean, if you want to ask if Charlie Manuel should take him out sooner, I think the answer is no, because he's your $24 million a year pitcher that's supposed to go the distance every time he goes out to pitch. So. I would blame the offense in the first couple months, but then I think Cliff Lee is responsible.
Yeah, I don't know if we can keep going with the lack of run support thing. I mean, when you're only looking at how many wins has he got? 3?
But often they'll spot him 4 runs, and then he blows the lead in the 6th and 7th inning.
Right.
So if you look at a lot of his recent starts, that's when he's lost the game.
Now you bring up April and May, and you know when you go back and take a look at it, this team went into April knowing that they weren't going to have Ryan Howard. Knowing that Chase Utley was doubtful. I mean, he went out, during spring training. And yet there was continued a lot of hype about the fact, the Phils are going to be number 1 in the East. What the heck happened?
Well, I think Chase Utley is the problem here. I think that Ruben Amaro accounted for Ryan Howard not being present, but I don't think he accounted for Chase Utley not being present. And a lot of that probably has to do with Chase Utley not being up front about how he was feeling. I honestly don't believe that Ruben Amaro thought that Chase Utley would miss the beginning of the season, going into planning and putting together a team. Somebody like Ty Wigginton was intended to help out a little bit for Ryan Howard, but that second bat he just wasn't able to get by the time they finally realized that that Chase Utley wasn't going to be there. So I mean, maybe they would have approached the entire offseason differently. Maybe instead of signing Jonathan Papelbon, they do sign another bat, to make up for one of the two. Because really, when you add up the games that Utley and Howard have missed, you're talking an entire season's worth of a left-handed bat.
A lot of time.
So I think Chase Utley is kind of the reason that they didn't get at least one more reinforcement. I mean, granted, Ty Wigginton's not ideal, but if you're looking for somebody that's a part-time player that can step in a little bit, I mean, I don't know you can do much better than that. I mean, you're not gonna trade for somebody's $12 million a year starter to fill in for Ryan Howard, but I don't think he anticipated being without Ryan Howard and Chase Utley at the same time.
Right.
So we had the big signing shortly before the trade deadline with Cole Hamels, and then the fire sale that happened shortly thereafter leading up to the trade deadline. Do you think that Ruben has mismanaged the funds for the Phillies?
Well, I don't think he has, and here's why. I think that Ruben did everything he could for the Phillies to win the World Series in 2011, and going into 2011, I think he overreached to sign Cliff Lee, and that was supposed to be the one move that brought them over the edge. And they were banking on Cliff Lee, Roy Oswalt, Roy Halladay, Cole Hamels. How could you not think that they were going places? So in some ways, with the current group that he had and the core he had, in some ways 2011 was his last shot with them. So, and I think it happens to all teams. You want to keep your core together as much as possible, supplement them with the right free agents. But then you're going to get to a breaking point where you just can't afford to keep them all. And the Phillies finally hit that point.
Right.
Unfortunately, with the injuries they had in the early season, they weren't able to sustain at least a shell of that. We knew Roy Oswalt wasn't going to be back, and they weren't spending any money for any premier bats this offseason. So in some ways, 2011 was the year, and I don't fault him for going for it in 2011, and now he just sort of has to pick up the pieces accordingly. Right. And if you think about it, just subtracting Roy Oswalt and Ryan Madsen, the pieces they lost, they didn't really lose that much overall, but 2011 was really the year.
Your Philadelphia website, you've expanded it recently. Real quick, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we've expanded to Eagledelphia, Sixerdelphia, and Flyerdelphia.
Yep.
And bit by bit, we're finally getting going. We're finally getting moving on the Eagledelphia site. We have a great writer, Jake, who's a really committed Eagles writer. He's been doing a great job anchoring us with that. And in Flyerdelphia, we have several great writers that have really jumped in right off the bat.
I can bet.
And Sixerdelphia is the last one to really get rolling. Mainly,
it'll get going once the season gets going.
There just hasn't been the Sixer news that there was, but looking forward to more on the way.
I want to get you back on because I got a lot more questions about what we might expect, perhaps maybe even next year, and perhaps we can do that on the phone. Frank, I really appreciate you being here. Thanks very much. All righty. Okay, and we want to thank Frank Klose for being here with us tonight. That was terrific. And we're going to get Frank back on the phone, perhaps maybe, in the next couple of weeks, right before the season closes. And we've got a few more questions that we wanted to go over with him. But look, let's go over and take a look at the league standings and the wild card races because they're starting to really heat up now at this point. Over in the American League, the Yankees currently have a 3.5 game lead over the Baltimore Orioles now. The Orioles had a very good week, and they worked their way back into the second spot in the East. The Chicago White Sox are now 3 games in front of the Detroit Lions. Texas Rangers are 4.5 games in front of the Oakland A's. But over in the wild card race, and that's where it starts to get interesting, if that were to close right now, the Oakland A's and the Baltimore Orioles would get in and play that one game to determine who would be the wild card. The Tampa Bay Rays, though, are still right there with that third wild card spot. In the National League, the Washington Nationals continue to be the best team in Major League Baseball, still 5 games ahead of the Atlanta Braves in the East. And in the, you got the Cincinnati Reds, 8 games in front of your Cardinals.
Yep.
And the San Francisco Giants are 3.5 games in front of the Dodgers. Don't worry too much about your Cardinals, though. In the wild card, it stays the same as it did last week. The Atlanta Braves and the St. Louis Cardinals would get in and play the one game. But
just like deja vu.
All
like
over again. But the Pirates are right there in third place. And that's our wrap for baseball. But before we leave it, hey, I'm going to ask you a question. Are you following me over on PhillySportsLive.com? Now, if you are, you knew that I submitted I thought was a pretty good op-ed piece this week on PED use. And the conflict, I think, that we kind of as a society have about use in our own lives and in society. So if you're curious about that, here's what you got to do. You got to go over to Philly Sports Live and you got to check out my writings that I keep putting over there every week.
Well, now, I'm a little worried about, you got a lot going on. Your performance has really been kicking up here. Do we need
I need a little 5-hour energy drink tonight?
Well, do we need to have you, should we submit a sample?
Oh, no. You think I'm doing too much, huh? well, listen, since you and I just both brought up PED use, that brings us to our Frat House Facebook post of the week. And I caused quite a bit of a firestorm the other day when I posted up an article about Lance Armstrong being stripped of his Tour de France titles by the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency. And I simply asked the question, why have rumors surrounded this guy for over a decade? Well, you jumped in on the conversation, Sidekick, and then Frat House fans, Lee and Bill and Dave, and I got it put pretty good to me. So, but no harm, no foul. Hey, that's the kind of thing we like. We like that.
There was no.
Keep it coming. Keep it coming.
It was a good debate.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Before we close it up for tonight, make sure you get over to fanjunkies.net and sign up for all the fun. Fanjunkies.net, where sports meets social networking, rather. And while I'm talking about Fan Junkies, I'm wondering how many of our Frat House friends out there took notice of this very exciting development just yesterday, actually. Our Frat House buddy, Jonathan Regis, we've had him here on the show, and I began an internet-based radio talk show that allows listeners to actually call in live. And it airs over on blogtalkradio.com every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 1 o'clock to 1:30 Eastern Time. Now, our second show is going to be tomorrow on Friday. So make sure you get over there and to that site and those times and listen in and call us up.
And the first show
The number's there. The number's there.
First show was great. I listened to it.
Thank you. We had a lot of fun doing it. We really did. Finally, if there's a show you gotta check out from the Frat House, it's gonna be next week's, because that's gonna be our first anniversary celebration show. And we've got a terrific number of things lined up, all kinds of things planned and in the works. And so make sure that you're right there with us and you're celebrating with us. And it's going to be the beginning of our second year, and it's going to be the beginning of the NFL season. All kinds of beginnings going on.
Yep.
Great stuff.
Sidekick may even do a pole dance.
Oh, please, no, save that. I don't know if that's making the air. Hey, listen, in the meantime, you know what you got to do. You got to keep us real. You got to keep us live. You got to keep us going. Hey, we're going to see you next week.
Tony's not very happy. Oh. Gosh, it's familiar. Well, we know what Tony thinks. That's a perfect strike.
That's a nice throw.
You just used one hand, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm right.
I think he's got both in. Look at
And the southpaw, too.